Welcome to the Julie Laughton Living Podcast, the place to get advice, tips, and tricks to building the life and luxury home of your dreams with 30-year business owner, designer, and builder, Julie Laughton. It all starts with a good plan. This is Julie Laughton Living.
Welcome back to the Julie Laughton Living Podcast. Today we're going to talk about communication and failure of communication and how that can damage the project, cause problems, and, all kinds of issues. So remember, it all starts with a good plan. And there's 7 simple steps to follow, which I insist, but I can tell you the stories about miscommunication and what happens. To learn more about those 7 simple steps in my free course, just click on the link below and take the course, and I hope you enjoy it. It's so important to follow the 7 simple steps. And I've had a couple clients, let's say they might be difficult, but maybe they insist on things that I possibly break my rules or we change the order. And it's always a failure when that happens because it always makes the cost go up after the fact. So if I don't follow the 7 simple steps, it's on me too, because it creates problems for the client and then they don't understand why. So I always insist, draw plans, pick everything, pick all the materials. Then I can do an accurate construction budget with all your materials picked. And then we can not have change orders through the project. But in the past, I've had situations where clients want to go faster. They refuse to pick anything because they don't have time, or they just refuse and they want to do it later. Or God forbid, they say they want to buy all the materials themselves. I've had these nightmare scenarios and they never work because when you start the job without the materials selected, the budget goes up because they don't know what they're going to pick. I don't know what they're going to pick. We give them an allowance, but then they pick something more expensive. So what are you going to do? So it's always a nightmare, but I don't know why people think that just because there's an allowance, their budget's magically going to fit that, because they refused to do their due diligence and homework in advance and pick things. So it makes it impossible to stick to a budget if the materials aren't picked. So I strongly recommend never doing that. I've gone through that before a couple times and it's not fun and it's very frustrating and it's just not the way to work. So I encourage you to pick all your materials before construction starts. This way your contractor can actually outline the budget exactly and you'll have no change orders. So that's the best advice. So the change orders, which you've heard of, they can snowball. So what happens is the minute you have a change order, what happens is everything is affected. Every cost is affected. It's like a ripple effect in a pond. So one change to the design or moving a wall or the materials affects everything else and every other price associated with it. So it's not just one thing. It affects how much more cleaning we have to do, how much more time we have to spend on the job. It elevates everything and all the costs because a change order usually means it's going to take longer. So because we have more work, so it extends the end date of the job. So you just don't want to go there. And the way to prevent change orders, again, is to pick all your materials and get that decided before the permit is pulled and before the construction starts. And then there's no reason for change orders except for the unknowns. Now, when you do a remodel, we have unknowns that we can't see under the walls. And there's always something in a remodel. But, we try to project, but you really don't know. So in a lot of cases, there's an unknown, which we'll address, but that's fair game. But everything else, should be projected and priced before you start. And then you avoid all that headache and hassle of the client increasing the budget, because it's the client's decisions that change the budget if they make decisions after construction starts. The most important thing you can do is have detailed plans and everything in writing. So I like to do a lot of emails and document everything because then it's there and clear. If the client chooses not to read it, that's not really on me, but then it creates problems. So you got to make sure the client reads everything. I always make sure, but you can't force them. So if they sign a contract and they say, I didn't read it, and then they start complaining, there's nothing worse, but it's not on me, it's on them. So do your homework and work with your designer before the contractor is hired and read everything and understand it, because there's a lot of detail. And really the detail the client needs to pay attention to is the vendor items. What are you picking? How much does it cost? So that's the good news. It's just, you don't have to worry about all the other stuff because the contractor prices it out and, you make some general decisions on, I want that room there and I want that and that. But it's those details on the materials and the quality and how it's going to look is where the homework is for the homeowner. So make sure you're paying attention, and hopefully your designer and your contractor and your architect tell you the cost immediately so you don't end up picking things that triple your budget. You need to know if the slab is a $10,000 slab. Whoa, that's going to kill your budget. Or maybe because most slabs start at $2,500. So, you got to be guided into the right direction before you fall in love with something. So that's my super duper best advice is know what it costs before you look at it and fall in love with it. So what's funny about this whole design process, because it's usually a blur and the client, wants to see stuff and it's a lot of work and they can't remember anything. And so here I am presenting samples and I'm telling them this is costs so much and that costs so much, so that I guide them through the decision process and keep them away from things that are going to blow their budget. But the final step, the final step is to have them sign the sample because, they might not remember or they just want to change their mind. So that affects the budget. So I like to, as a designer, our last step of the design process is to physically bring the samples to the house, lay them out, and have the client sign the back of the sample and document it, in the verbiage of the bid or the change order or the contract. So the contract, in my case, lists every detail of every specification, all the appliances, all the plumbing, all the slabs, all the tile, everything's there. So along with that being written out, it's also documented by having the client sign the sample. So don't forget, you want to sign your samples because what if your designer loses them or forgets what you picked? Just make sure you sign stuff and take pictures and document it. Okay, so probably the most important thing, again, with your architect and your interior designer, this is all the stuff you do to get a custom home and a custom remodel built. I'm not talking about decorating and sofas and pillows. I'm talking about getting this home built. You need to pick all the things that are screwed and glued to the walls. And it's a list of probably 10 items, but it can be overwhelming, but you have to identify them and pick them and know the price of them because that affects your budget. But the screwed and glued items to the walls are, the floors, the cabinets, the countertops, the faucets, the appliances, the backsplashes and the shower doors and the windows and the interior doors and the doorknobs. So it's a short list, but it's a lot of work if you are not organized, but it's not a lot of work if you just get that done with your designer and they guide you through it and you see photos, you see pricing, and then you sign off. And then that hard part's over. And then you can talk about decorating and furnishing the house, which is, a later step. But it's very important to pick everything that's screwed and glued to the walls. Okay, so the importance of communication is talking about everything in advance before you sign everything, and then reading everything before you sign it, and participating in the design process in advance. So the importance of communication is really talking about it and then doing the due diligence and cooperating and participating in every aspect of reading it, signing things, and really understanding what's happening. And I like to make a lot of notes and a lot of emails, and my clients participate with me in the beginning. And, we pick everything in advance. So that saves the nightmare scenario. But so if you're not doing that, you need to do that. And when you're thinking about a remodel, make sure you do all your selections in advance of starting the construction, and you communicate with everyone clearly. Even if you don't understand, just say, hey, I don't understand what you're talking about. Would you please explain it? Because it's all the same. Every job's the same. It's the people are different. The clients are different, and how they understand is what's different. But every job is the same. So there's no mystery to this process, but you need to have it explained because it's a wonderful process, and it's black and white, but it's how your architect and your designer and your contractor communicate and explain it to you, and how you participate in that is the key. Thank you again for listening to another Julie Laughton Living Podcast. I hope you enjoyed the advice. Also, for more tips, go to my website. And then also look up my 7 simple steps to guide you through your remodel or custom home build. And don't forget, it all starts with a good plan. Happy holidays, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Julie Laughton Living. For more information or to connect with Julie one-on-one, visit julielaughtonliving.com. And don't forget, it all starts with a good plan.